The return of Kristaps Porzingis, three-pointers and Mazzulla-Ball, and the mental approach to watching the Boston Celtics, all from a very special fan's perspective. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Yup. B-Town, be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Back to back, if I say it, it's stamped. Locked on number 19, the best one, the next one. Juice loose in your pool now for the next run. It's the C's, who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis, recap the madness. Every game, every practice. Best daily pod, no cap like Brad Beckett. Clutch like Drew to KP, tap in daily. Primetime dapping D White on the sideline. Raining Jayson, how it started, raising banners, how we finish. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. I got you covered every Monday through Friday. Special schedule this week. It's Monday through sort of Friday because Thanksgiving is on Thursday. I'm not going to record a show on Thanksgiving. Friday show will be recorded Friday night after the Celtics play the Bulls. So that, instead of being a bonus podcast, will serve as the Friday/Saturday podcast. So still 5 podcasts this week. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Watch a show on YouTube. You can even see what my little dog is doing off in the corner sometimes when he's messing around back there. So make sure you're subscribed. He's really literally pulling back the curtain. I'm going to have to stop him from doing that because that has to stop. YouTube exclusive behind the scenes. Make sure you're subscribed, watch the YouTube page, get into the comment section, and let me know what you're thinking. I'm John Karalis. I've been covering the Celtics for about 20 years now, doing it as a beat writer for Boston Sports Journal now, and as the author of Built Different, a book available on johnkaralis.com for $30 shipped to you in the U.S., personalized and signed. Now, when I say I've been covering the team for about 20 years now, that's because back in 2006, I started a blog with this guy, Chuck McKenney. We called that, what did we call that little blog of ours, Chuck?
It's been so long, and as my Geritol, I need to take my Geritol today to remember.
Chuck and I started redsarmy.com. We registered that site back in 2006, back when they were awful, just awful. And we ran that thing for a long time. And then when life gave us a choice to be responsible adults, Chuck took that and I said, nope, I'm running away from my problems. And that's where we diverged. But it's been a pleasure. And I wanted to bring Chuck on because after my trip to the White House and after a little bit of reflection of like, I can't believe that I've gone from that dumb little blog, which is not dumb, but it was like thinking about like all of the work that we ignored to update that site when we did, and to be like at the White House and that they let me in to the White House. I was like, man, I gotta bring Chuck back on because that's where this whole thing started. So Chuck, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you. It was surreal for me to see you at the White House too. I mean, I had the classic case of, hey, I know that guy. But we've come a long way from those crude jokes, and probably a lot of inappropriate content that might not pass muster today. But
yeah, probably a lot of stuff that we wouldn't do in today's. Yeah.
I wouldn't show my kids, but nonetheless, it took us we had some great times, and it was a blast, with the fans we've had and the folks who still kind of remember us and joke with us on Twitter. So I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. But yeah, it's good to be here. I mean, it's for a Celtics fan. I mean, it doesn't get any better. Right. It just honestly, I've just been, I thought you would reach out to me when they were in the middle of a 5-game skid because, I do have this reputation for being a little cynical, a little negative, but I'm like, wait, he wants to talk to me and they're dominating. They're off. Like, what does he need me for?
Chuck, come on, give yourself a little bit of credit. I mean, no, actually don't. That's all completely accurate. It's so funny though. Yeah, I mean, I it's not that I need you, Chuck. I want you here. So you have like you're still very much the outward Celtics fan, where I've had to put all of that aside and just have to be objective and all of that stuff. As I always say, my loyalty is to the game of basketball, and if the Celtics respect the game of basketball, then great. If they don't, I'll let you know. Chuck, you can sit there and be irrational if you'd like, and outwardly rooting for the team. And so, but you know what it's like. We used to be producers in TV together. The media side and all of that. So I do consider you more than like a fan. You have like some knowledge of how things kind of work. So you've got a little more cachet than you understand,
Thank
and
you.
you're at least a mid-tier Twitter star in Celtics land. So I mean, you got to give yourself that.
I don't know if that's worth anything these days. But...
I don't know. All right, let's talk basketball here. We spent 6 minutes of people. Don't worry, I'll put a timestamp in so people can skip it. People don't like all the preamble to Kristaps Porzingis is back. That was a little bit of a surprise to everybody that he'd be back on this particular game. How surprised were you to see like Kristaps Porzingis available? And what'd you think about his debut?
Yeah, I mean, I was completely surprised. I thought we were at least a couple of weeks away. Frankly, my first thought was, what the hell have the beat writers been doing? They see this guy every day, and they don't even know he's ready. And now we're all learning at the same time. It seemed like all the writers were surprised. So it was interesting. I think, going back to when he had the surgery, we always figured that, he would be back early December, but it just didn't seem like the Celtics were leading us to think that he was going to be back. There was no need to bring him back. So he's back. But I mean, if you watched him play for 3 minutes, you knew that he looked like he was, there were no signs of any injury to me or any sort of giddy up in his step or any sort of concern. He seemed like he was moving around well. So I think it was fantastic. They brought him back when he was ready. And, I thought he looked great. I mean, he missed some shots. I don't know what his field goal percentage was, but just more so how he fit seamlessly with everybody else. I know he'd only been gone a couple of months, but when you just put him back into that mix, to me, it just seemed seamless.
It did seem seamless, and it's just bringing everybody back. This is like the absolute luxury, and I kind of feel like the Celtics. We've always talked about like how handcuffed they were by this collective bargaining agreement, but in a way, looking at Kristaps Porzingis coming back, I'm thinking that they might have actually been a little bit saved from themselves in a way, because they didn't have the option of overthinking their offseason. They're like, we have to bring everybody back. But by bringing everybody back and not being like, oh, well, if we tinker a little bit and move these couple of guys to try and get an upgrade, you don't have that kind of like, oh, we screwed up by making this trade. We thought this trade would work out better, like Julius Randle in Minnesota or something like that. So the Celtics, by keeping that continuity, however it happened, when Porzingis comes back in, it's just, oh yeah, this is just your regular starting five. And he just goes in with Jaylen Brown, who he has like that instant, I don't know, that cosmic connection with Jaylen. Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And it's, if I had just zapped you from, a sleep, you went to sleep in June, you woke up on this day and be like, okay, how long has Kristaps been out? I feel like everybody would have said like, I don't know, normal off season. Like he looks like he's had a normal off season. So that's impressive. It's impressive to see that. And the thing is that he was rusty and he need to get his wind. So I guess that means that things are going to be okay for the Celtics. Did it interest you that he was taking like just coming in, bombing away from three right away?
Well, it seemed like they were setting him up to do that. Those are shots I felt like they were normal shots for him, and he didn't come in with any hesitancy. It's the same mentality that every shooter on his team has. When they're open, when they're in their range, they shoot it. So he just stepped right into that. So I guess I wasn't surprised. That's Mazzulla-Ball. I fully embraced that. I will say, I think part of what's made I think like connected with Porzingis is Horford, right? I mean, Al's been fantastic again, right? So part of the part two of the Porzingis injury for me was always, well, how much are we going to tax Horford when Porzingis is out, and is that going to be a problem if we overtax him now? Will it be a problem later in the season with Al? I mean, Al's played a lot. He's not playing back-to-backs, which was what similar situation to last year. And I think I checked before I came on, he's averaging like 1 minute more of court action than he was last year. So it's not ideal, right? He's 1 year older. You wanted to maybe pare him down a little bit, but I think he's looked good. I mean, he's, pardon my language, 38 years old, right? He's still moving laterally. He's still hitting an incredible amount. I mean, he's like over 40% from three, right? I mean, I think he's been unbelievable. And part of that is probably we all thought he was going to take 2 steps back after last year. So I think for me now it's really, Porzingis is back. He looks good. It's managing these two guys, right? I think you got to make sure they're both ready for the end of the season, right? You want to make it through the season, but I don't want Al. Excuse me. I don't want Al to fall off a cliff in February. I really, we need him. So it's just about I want to manage Horford's minutes from here on out.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we're 12 minutes into a show and you already forced me to edit the show. So thanks, Chuck, for making me do more work. As usual, just like the good old days, Chuck's making me do more work.
I thought this was the Wild West. I thought we could say anything. My bad. Sorry.
This is a corporate podcast, Chuck, with standards and practices, and children are listening. So I'm putting you in timeout while I read the ads that pay me the money and require me to edit this show now. We'll be right back. Let's talk about Mazzulla-Ball. Chuck mentioned Mazzulla-Ball in the three-pointers. Very interesting that he's on board with it. We'll talk about that when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood and Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action and NBA action with America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel, and they are offering you $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So open up that FanDuel app after you sign up at FanDuel.com. You place that first $5 bet, and it gives you everything you need to place a live bet. So if you get that urge to place that first bet in the middle of an NFL game, you go to the same page where you place your bets. You find the latest stats, live play-by-play, and a whole lot more on the same page where you place your bets. So that's at FanDuel.com. Sign up, set your limits, set your budget so you know you're using your disposable income. Don't go overboard. There's no need to do that. There's plenty of time to have some fun on FanDuel and gamble responsibly and get started with those $150 in bonus bets if you hit that first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks for listening to Locked On Celtics, making your first listen every day. Remember, post-game, we have 2 podcasts, Locked On Celtics Postcast, and then after that, it's me on Locked On Celtics. Both of those show up on the audio feed. Video, immediately after the game, go to Locked On Sports Boston. You get the immediate reaction there from Steve Lennox, and then afterwards, later into the night on Locked On Celtics, my video drops on the regular Locked On Celtics page. So make sure you get both podcasts. It's an extra show for you there on Locked On Celtics. All right, let's get back to Chuck McKenney here. You mentioned that you're on board with Mazzulla-Ball. Now, Chuck, you are an old man, right? You're older than I am. I always yes. How is it possible that you're not screaming, old man yells at cloud about how many threes the Celtics are shooting? You are on board. What do you think about all of the threes, the Celtics offense, and all of that?
I mean, it's hard to argue with something that works, right? I mean, I think you just have to be a, pragmatist. I don't know, is that the right word? They're winning, right? So, that was part of their success last season. They're doubling down on this. They're coming back and they're shooting more threes. And I think so part of like buying into Mazzulla-Ball is buying into Mazzulla, right? So
yes.
It's no secret that I think a lot of us were a little uncertain. When he was put in a tough spot, I felt like we were a little concerned with Brad kind of handing the reins over to him at the beginning of when the whole thing with Ime went down, right? And he was very he has this sort of socially awkwardness to him, and he had a learning curve, right, for his first season and with the timeouts and everything. But man, has he come a long way, right? Like now, just watching him coach, right? That whole thing with like not calling timeouts is like ancient history. Now he's all about the strategic timeout. That I forget, was it the Wizards game where he had the technical foul, and then he was asked about it afterwards, and he said something like, "I was trying to manipulate the environment" or something. Now, like, oh my God, like Joe, you're so like locked into this sort of like emotional aspect to the game. Like I'm all in him now, and he's earned that from us, right? So it's this sort of trust, and it was just watching him coach throughout the playoffs and the finals, and the way he carried himself after the finals, carrying the trophy around the North End, like. He's a Rhode Island guy. Like I'm in love with the guy. So he can't do anything wrong to me. I've come full circle on Joe, but he's earned it. It's not, he won. And I don't think it was anything sort of, with all due respect to certain, to some coaches who are more sidecars when they have teams loaded with stars. I don't think that's the case with Joe. Obviously, it's also a team sort of organizational style. I think Brad is fully on board with this type of basketball that they're playing. And that's why he was confident putting Joe in place. So everybody's on board. Everybody's bought in. They've had success. How can you not, embrace it? Because let's be real, that second quarter last night was freaking unbelievable. They had 51 points. They had 12 three-pointers. I couldn't believe what I was watching. So that was just so crazy that, with those moments, I've learned to take, those moments where there's too many forced shots, where there's too much isolation, because the payoff, at least with this team, is always incredible. So, I mean, the proof is in the results. That's why I'm all in. Most important thing to me is winning, not how they win. Is that they're winning.
Yeah. So the people who say that the threes are boring, because I still see the comments. I'm 100% with you. I buy it. I understand. Like I've come around. You could probably, if somebody wanted to create a bot to scan all of my podcasts, I'm sure I've railed against a lot of the stuff that I'm like, no, this is great now. Part of it is like learning along the way why certain things happen. You talk to people like those 3-pointers when they come down and fire them up with maybe 19 seconds on the shot clock. It used to drive me nuts. And then you realize people talk to you about, well, no, if the defender is dipping below the 3-point line and he's giving you space to step into a clean look, sometimes that's the best look you're going to get. So we encourage guys to take that. It's early offense, and it's really the same percentage as any other shot. It's just it's off the dribble. Maybe the catch and shoots are a higher percentage, but you understand, like, you have to do that, because when you do that and you hit a couple, the defender steps up and now the spacing is better, and that opens things up for everybody. So things that I think fans in general have a tendency to just This is in a vacuum. This is the shot. I did not like this shot. I do like this shot. Sometimes it has to do with it going in and not going in, you know?
Of course. Yeah.
And so there's that. But one of the things I definitely want to do with this podcast is explain, like, no, you do this because then this and then that, and this is what they're trying to do. I've completely bought in too, but there's still people who have the comments are like, I don't want to watch a bunch of three. I don't want to watch 63 pointers go up.
Well, I think that they're really just focused because they get sort of just transfixed on those, 10 attempts that are not great, right?
Yeah.
So even if they're sort of in the system, like you said, and necessary, there's still probably at least a handful, maybe more, of what we call bad shots, right? Where they too much dribbling. I mean, these guys are all human, right? So when we get those 3-pointers, we're like, oh, that's when we all roll our eyes. But how many sequences do they have where they're moving the ball? When they get the ball into the paint, those paint touches, and then they kick it out. That sequence last night where I think White and Kata had this sort of like, back and forth, and it ended up with Kata, White passed up an open three to get Kata the dunk. Like the way they move the ball, like that's beautiful basketball. And I think that's what this team has. So it's more about like watching them whip the ball around the perimeter and taking those open shots. I mean, I see the beauty in that more so than, it's another 3-pointer. I mean, we want to romanticize what? Do we want to see somebody hold the ball 8 seconds in the post and throw up a baby hook? I mean, that's not that sexy, right? I mean, but what I mean? But this team does a little bit of both. I mean, I love when Tatum attacks. We have Brown, who has a great mid-range game. To me, it's weird. Like, you'll tell me they're going to take 63s, but a lot of times I'm watching the game and I see a lot of different things. I do, and maybe I'm just really just celebrating their success, but I don't know where they are in drives to the game or paint touches and so forth. I don't look that deeply into the stats, but I do see it with the players that they have, right? With Tatum attacking, Brown in the mid-range. I see a variety.
It's interesting because I want to get into this mental approach about watching the C's this season, because I, from behind the scenes, am seeing a little bit of a, I don't want to say depressed viewership in the sense of like the number, but the numbers are down a little bit. Like people watching the podcast, listening to the podcast, the numbers aren't exactly where I thought. And anecdotally, I think a lot of people are like not reacting the way I thought they would. Let's talk about that when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by Built. If you're a renter and you are not using Built, then you are missing out, my friend, because you can be earning points on your rent. And it's a reality. That's right. Through Built, you don't even have to check with your landlord. You can start earning points right away, and you can use those points towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, even your next rent payment. I wish this was, I had been a renter for a long time. I bet you I could have saved plenty by using these Built points. There's no cost to join Built. As a member, you'll earn these valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world where you can redeem your Built points towards. I didn't know there were 500 airlines that existed, but you can redeem your points towards over 500 airlines. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment. How about that? And unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on your rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Very important. That's joinbuilt, joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Start earning points on your rent payments today. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go sign up for our free newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Locked On Celtics has a free newsletter. You got Celtics story, an NBA story, a fantasy story, the whole league in one spot, free directly to your inbox 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Locked On Daily for the free Locked On Celtics newsletter. All right. So one of the things from this season is that I've noticed that I don't know if people aren't really fully committed to the Celtics yet. Like, okay, we know that they're good. I'll pick them up like later on, Christmas or January. Oh, maybe now that Kristaps Porzingis is back, maybe they'll get more people. Maybe people are focused on other things, whatever. It just feels like people are just, I don't know, bored with just not just the 3-pointers and stuff that I was talking about. I feel like they're just kind of like, whatever. Like a season ago, if they lost that Hawks game the way they did and played that Toronto game with, the missed Tatum, shot at the regulation buzzer and all of that stuff, it would have been madness. It would have been absolute mayhem. And now, even with the loss, people are like, it's all right. It's only November. I'm like, are people like, I don't know, Chuck, what's your attitude towards this?
I'm a little bit surprised. I haven't felt that. But I guess I thought maybe we'd see it in February, March, with every sort of season, there's a bit of a lull. For me, it's been, 16 years since the last championship. The last 3 or 4 years, it's been not agonizing, but when you're invested in a young team and they have potential, watching them sort of churn their way through the learning lessons, losing to gain experience. I mean, that hurts. That cuts deep, right? Like those are the things that make the championship even sweeter. So for me, it's like now we're here, we're on top of the mountain, we're playing exciting basketball, we're dominating. I'm kicking back and soaking in as much as I can. Give me all the regular season stuff, right? Because I know that these windows are typically 4 years maybe? Like we could have 4 years where we're this dominant of a team. Why would I not take every? I mean, we've been around the block. We've talked a few times about how old we are. So I'm going to soak it all in as much as I can. I mean, we're not the average fans, right? I mean, I guess some folks will check out and check back in, but for me, this is what I've been waiting for. This is why you slog through those seasons with Sebastian Telfair and Mark Blount and freaking all those guys, right? And all those tough losses that they've had over the last 3 or 4 years. Now I just want to sit back and watch them kick everyone's butts and enjoy it. Like I'm all in.
I wonder if it's 2024 and our attention spans are so short, and I think it's so weird. I think the NBA coverage is so different than say the NFL coverage. I think NFL coverage is so full of analysis, and there are hot takes because there's hot takes about everything, but the NBA shows are almost exclusively hot takes. It's just all debate. And I think this is ESPN. It's all debate. It's all hot takes. It's all just entertainment versus the analysis, the, diving into what makes the game great, what makes the game beautiful. And if there's no clash debate, I disagree with you. No, I disagree with you. And people that's the stuff that makes people completely entertained. They're when that's not there, people are like, it's boring. And the Celtics are, in that respect, completely boring because they've got a locker room full of high quality individuals that no one gets into trouble. No one says anything controversial. The most controversial person is Jaylen Brown. And he's like, everybody should have rights. That's the most controversial thing that's being said in the locker room. Joe Mazzulla is the most interesting person because he talks about having a laser pointer on his head and wanting fights in the NBA, which is fun, but that's what people pay most attention to. The Celtics are just a dominating basketball team. But to your point, when we were watching back in our 20s and 30s, there wasn't all of this social media and everything. So we were actively searching out, hey, when they win, when they're this good, give me more Celtic content. They're talking about the Celtics on the news. I want to watch the news because I want to see them talk about the Celtics. And now you've got, hey, the Celtics are dominating it. They're the champs. They are only 2 games behind the Cavs. Cavs go on this massive historical run, and they're only 2 games up on Boston. Everybody's like, we'll make up another game when we play them on Sunday. But the interest isn't as high. All of this stuff exists for people to consume it, and they're like, I guess when you're hungry and there's like a lot of food, you're like, I'm not going to eat all the food. Whereas we grew up hungry.
The landscape has definitely changed, right? Obviously, I don't know. To your point about ESPN, so I think it was this morning, right? Because Porzingis played last night. So I put on Get Up, and I record that show. I just because I recorded it. This is the type of fan I am. Back when the Celtics were in the playoffs, I recorded these shows because I wanted to see who was picking against them, and so right. So I'm very petty and stuff.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So anyway, so I still have it recorded. So I'm like, oh, maybe they'll have a segment on Get Up about Porzingis' return and that second quarter. Now, granted, there was a football game, whatever, the other night. So I don't know. I scrolled through 50 minutes and it was all football. And it wasn't even like timely highlights. It was like you said, all debate, conversation, who's the best team now. I'm like, I just watched an entire sports show for almost an hour and they didn't get into anything NBA. Like, to me, that still blows my mind. I know the NFL is still king, but they want to debate that sort of stuff, right? What they're providing the audience now is more debate, conversation, talking points, and all that. So it's definitely a different landscape. My son and my youngest is 15, big basketball fan. He has a hard time watching more than 2 quarters of basketball on like weeknights, just because his attention span is. And he'll always tell me, "We'll be watching the game at halftime." He's like, "I'm going upstairs." I said, "What? We get, it's a good." He'll say, "I'll get the notifications on my phone." And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
I'm like, I just, and I think he's not unique. I think a lot of kids his age, that's how they are, especially with the regular season. They'll wake up, they'll get all the highlights on their phone, and then that's it. They don't have to sit through an entire game. And it was never the case for me, or I think you, as kids or even younger fans. I was consuming it. Yeah. I was trying to find different ways to consume different things about it, and now it's everywhere. So you almost have to like tune it out and pick. And again, it's not like you said with the Celtics. There's almost a sort of like it's boring to a point because they're dominating. They don't have these ridiculous personalities. They don't have storylines that fit those types of shows.
Right.
So,
there's nothing to talk about. And this is why I always say, like, when the Jaylen versus Jayson stuff came up last year, I'm like, they literally have nothing to talk about. They have no storylines. The Celtics are so good. There's no, are they going to win or they're not going to win? And it was always like, well, they're not going to win because Jaylen is better than Jayson. Jason's better than Jaylen, and they got to trade one of those guys and, whatever. The storylines, the drama, none of it actually fit. They didn't generate any of the stuff that Stephen A. Smith could yell about. There's just none. So that's part of why the Celtics are seen as being a little bit on the boring side. I'll take a boring team that's 15-3 and about to win a championship, like second championship in a row, like that. I take that over the alternative any day of the week. It's so fascinating though to see, because my stepson is 15, and like he even games that he says he wants to watch, he'll watch like a quarter or a period of hockey, and then like he's gone. And you're like, what? They don't have that attention span. He's always just sitting there. He's like scrolling through shorts on his phone, and you're like, it's a minute at a time. Okay, you got me. You got 30 seconds to get me. Nope. 30 seconds to get me. Nope. Okay. It's wild. And we hear about the NBA ratings being down. Well, this is part of it. How do you get ratings? How do you measure what your son is doing? How do you measure that as popularity about the league? That's the hard part. That's the toughest thing that the NBA has to figure out right now. I don't know. But the Celtics, I don't know. Sign me up for covering a 15-3 team, right? Like,
dude, I'm in my glory. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I know Adam Silver's priorities are different than mine, obviously, right? That's why they're rolling out new gimmicks for the All-Star game. But for me, it's just like, hey, we're rolling. I'm watching. I'm going to continue to watch, and I'm going to bask in it. I'm going to record ESPN commentators who say negative things about my team. Kind of confess that to everybody on the pod.
Yeah, there you go. But, you're not alone.
But I mean, this is, to me, I just say it again, this is what we've been grinding for. It's,
100%.
It's this next like 4 or 5 years where we're gonna, and I don't know if this area has been spoiled by the Patriots, who had a 20-year window of success. Now it's clearly fallen off, but there's no guarantee that the Celtics sort of dynasty, if it turns into one, is going to go beyond 4 years. So I need just, as the kids say, inject it all into my veins now. I just want it, and because I know it's going to be short, relatively short-lived.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. Since I have to edit the show anyway, do you have a string of curse words that you want to unleash? And since I already have extra work to do, I've already got 2 that I got to cut out. So do you have any extras?
I didn't realize you went PG. I think you were always sort of like the renegade when it came to like breaking new ground on the internet. And now I feel like I'm on Jimmy Fallon's show. I'm getting bleeped left and right. So
it's a sad state of affairs, but I got a mortgage to pay. So
I get it, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Chuck McKenney, everybody. I always appreciate having Chuck on. Chuck, one of the co-founders of Red's Army, me being the other one. It's the 2 of us that did Red's Army. And Red's Army is no other way to put it, launched my career covering the Celtics. And so Chuck is a huge part of that. And so, like I said, having a reflective moment standing there on the lawn in the Rose Garden of the White House, I was like, how did I go from Red's Army to this? So I was like, I got to talk to Chuck. And so that's why Chuck is here. You can follow Chuck on Twitter. I put it up on the thing. It's MCK Chuck. Yeah, I opened up your way. What's your Twitter?
I think it's Mick_Chuck or something like that. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm trying to quit social. Stop pulling me back in.
All right, fine. You're muted again. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Make Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Locked On NBA your second listen, because I host on Fridays with Jake Madison. Get into the YouTube page. Get into the comment section. Lots of great threads in the post-game podcast. So go check that out. Join and share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.